I got sent a email video request. It's an interesting description title. The question says, boxing gossip. In your mind, how bad is Deontay Wilder? How does he fare against top opposition at heavyweight? Very interesting question. When you look at a fighter, let's look at Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather. If I was Manny Pacquiao in that fight, would I have made the same mistakes that Manny Pacquiao made? Very possibly. You know, Floyd is the best at what he does. He is an expert at causing technical difficulties. You know, if you were Manny Pacquiao, if you had Manny Pacquiao's skills, could Floyd put you in a position where you'd become a low output guy, where you'd become so ineffective? Yeah, I see that. The difficulty is, I'm not a professional fighter. If you're watching this, you are most probably not a professional fighter. But ask yourself the following question, and I'd be very interested to hear your response. Please comment them below. And all I want here is a yes or a no. Would you make the same mistakes as Deontay Wilder? You sitting at home watching this video, you who are not a professional fighter, who are not a world champion, would you make the same mistakes this guy, Deontay Wilder, makes? And for me, that is a key question in assessing how bad is Deontay Wilder. Let me start with an obvious remark. If you're Deontay Wilder, one of the key things you want to exploit is your height, your reach, your range, however you want to phrase it. It's an advantage you bring into the fight. Yet Wilder's ridiculous stance is so wide that not only does he lose the ability to move and to adjust his movement, but he also gives up his height. For me, his stance is a real issue. It means he cannot have fast footwork. He cannot change things up. He cannot get out of the way quickly. Put simply, if your legs are like this, you can move them. If they're like this, it's much harder to. If they're like this, you're 3 or 4 inches shorter. His stance is so basic and so obviously wrong. I mean, this is not high level, advanced stuff. Ask yourself at home, would you make that mistake? Another thing, moving back with your chin up in the air, without putting your hands up. You know, if you get in a fight, in a pub, if you get stopped in the street and get in a fight, will your chin be up like this with your hands down by your waist? Would you make that mistake? Let me give one final example. You are in there with a dangerous opponent. You are in there with a guy who you know has power, and you know hits harder than a guy who has dropped you previously. Now you land a punch on him that hurts him. At that point, when you've got him hurt, do you react calmly and clinically and work your way in to secure a stoppage? Or do you start swinging madly like a windmill, almost knocking yourself off your feet because you're going so wild and so amateurish? Yet again, I ask, would you sitting at home watching this video make that mistake? For me, it's difficult. Deontay Wilder is someone I really have not been sold on throughout his entire career. And I believe the reason he's got to where he's got is because of the careful management and woeful level of opposition he's been in with. He has improved. Deontay Wilder is now a much more advanced, capable operator than where he was 5 or 6 fights ago. Deontay Wilder today destroys the Deontay Wilder who fought Audley Harrison, for example. However, the flaws are still so obvious. He's only had one fight with an opponent who I would confidently call top 50, and that was against Bermane Stiverne. He impressed me that fight. He did much better than I expected him to. And he answered several questions. He was able to move. He was able to go 12 rounds. He was able to outpoint opponent rather than just knocking them out. That was a good performance as Deontay Wilder performances go. I was impressed by that. But Bermane Stiverne that night was woeful. We know he was apparently dehydrated. He was so plodding, so unathletic. His foot speed was so terrible. It's difficult with the benefit of hindsight to assess how strong that piece of form is. So the question I have is that this guy makes some of the most basic errors you will see from any world champion. Can you imagine Vladimir Klitschko hurting an opponent and windmilling like that? Can you imagine Vladimir Klitschko standing with a stance that's terrible? These are errors that you sitting at home watching this video would know not to make. These are errors you would not make if you were in a pub fight. Yet the heavyweight champion of the world is making these errors, and he's getting away with it because of his natural advantages and because of the level of opposition he's been in with. Put simply, I find it hard to rank Deontay Wilder. I find it hard to say with confidence who would beat him, because he has beat everyone he's been in with. He does carry immense power. He's a very big, athletic guy who can go 12 rounds. And because of that, he will beat 9 guys out of 10. I think, in terms of who beats him, for a start, we're looking at fighters with power. Because if he's going to be that defensively open and that defensively irresponsible, and we know there are question marks over his chin, guys with power, I think, can really hurt him. Guys like Vladimir Klitschko, Alexander Povetkin, the guys I'd strongly pick over Deontay Wilder. Guys like David Price, guys like Joseph Parker, guys who are maybe operating at a lower level but genuinely carry power. These are guys I would say would have a good chance against Wilder because he's so defensively open. Really skilled technicians with foot speed, with movement. Guys like Eddie Chambers, guys like Steve Cunningham. I understand that these guys aren't massive punchers or massive guys, but these are guys who pose a challenge to him due to how technically poor he is. To answer your question, how bad is Deontay Wilder? He's not terrible in the sense that he's got a lot of attributes, and he probably does beat most heavyweights out there. But for a world champion, he's bad. And I mean, he's really bad. And the way I look at it, and it comes down to this fundamental point I've made several times throughout this video. Let's pick, Deontay Wilder's the WBC heavyweight champion. Let's pick the WBC light heavyweight champion. Let's pick Adonis Stevenson. Would Adonis Stevenson make any mistakes that I wouldn't make? No. But yet Deontay Wilder persists in making mistakes that even the most obvious club fighter would be able to handle, be able to avoid. And I think that's really relevant. And I think that, sadly, is telling in terms of what I think about his upside. Let me know your thoughts. Would you make those mistakes? Keen to discuss.